Hey guys, so I just wanted to respond to npage's argument. I'll link the video up on the description box. He sets up a series of premises which he uses to conclude that God exists. Hate You All 66 and Clutchology made good rebuttals for him, so I'm not really gonna repeat anything except I just want to add a little bit first before I attack another argument he makes. So Clutchology attacks npage's first premise. The premise is that if you cannot imagine something to exist, then it cannot exist. Clutchology correctly states that this argument implies a causal link between our ability to imagine something and its possibility, which makes no sense. So I just wanted to add to this Clutchology's great response from another angle. Imagine 50 years before the Big Bang was formulated. The theory was actually formulated. Nobody could have imagined that the Big Bang occurred, right? Because before it was discovered, nobody would imagine it. But that doesn't mean that the Big Bang did not happen before it was discovered. It happened billions of years ago. So of course it still happened, right? So the idea of causality between the two is ridiculous. This is why I hate philosophy and arguments from logic, because what you think is logical may not actually be logical. But in any case, I wanted to attack another one of npage's premises. He says that no physical object creates your mind, and that if the physical universe disappears, your mind will still exist. So here I want to make, in this video, I want to make a connection between the mind, the abstract concept of the mind, and the physical brain. So first of all, the argument that he makes is not based on any evidence. He just says it. The mind and the brain are not connected. Why? Because you think it's not? Because it feels in your heart that it's not? That's not how science works. Secondly, you can actually infer causality by conducting experiments, right? That's how science works. If we increase or decrease the input of something and we see a changed output, that means that the input and output are connected. That's why in biology, we do experiments with mutations. We decrease the input. We study diseases. That's a decreased input. And we see what the resulting outcome is. So now, consciousness and the mind are hard things to define. Let's just say, for the sake of this video, that the mind encompasses these certain things: awareness and perception of the world, decision-making capability, and memory. So 3 things, right? And there may be other ways to define it, but I think this is a pretty good definition, right, of the abstract nature of the mind. So now let's prove that that awareness and perception of the world are tied to the brain, the physical brain. If you've ever seen the movie A Beautiful Mind, you'll know that the movie is about a guy who has schizophrenia. I want to talk to you about the positive symptoms which characterize this disease. That means people with this disease have increased awareness and perception of things that do not exist. They see people that do not exist and hear sounds that do not exist. This symptom of the mind, right, perception is in the mind, have been tied directly to something physical in the brain. That is, there's an increased sensitivity and activity of dopamine receptors in the mesolimbic pathway. Furthermore, drugs that decrease activity of dopamine in the mesolimbic pathway alleviate these symptoms, right? So I have a link in the description box in which you can read more about this in detail. But I want to say what this shows us is that the mesolimbic pathway processes the raw data we get from our environment and translates it like a computer compiler into something we call perception, right? It acts like as a computer compiler. For example, the vibrations of the atoms of the air are translated into the perception of sound and speech, right? So of course, this doesn't prove that all perception is caused by the mesolimbic pathway or even the brain as a whole. There could be other, non-physical entities to it, but you need to prove it. But at least we proved that there's some physical entities to it. Now let's talk about decision making. First, it's important to know that they have found the decision-making neurons of the brain in monkeys. We have obtained it. They did an experiment where the monkeys have to choose from 2 options for reward. These options are a series of pictures shown one after another in sequential order, and each picture has a value attached to it. And choosing the set of pictures as a whole at the end, after each one is shown, gives you the reward. So with each picture, the neurons act cumulatively to in making a decision until at last they make the final decision and come to a conclusion. So with each picture being added, they lean either towards one side or to the other until finally they reach the final decision. So these neurons assign value to certain options that the monkey can choose from and then add and subtract. In fact, scientists can know the decision the monkey has reached a fraction of a second before the rest of the brain of the monkey knows, which is really interesting. I think it's really cool. That's why I love neuroscience. But in any case, I have the paper in which this is described attached in the description box. Now let's get into memory. Sorry, I'm really rushing here because I have a lot of things to say. Now, memory is something that we consider to be abstract, but it is actually concretely defined in our neurons. People who get into car accidents and get lesions in the brain have amnesia. For example, we see loss of hippocampus causes anterior grade amnesia. So we can conclude that the hippocampus is important for memory. Again, the loss of input leads to a change in output, right? So furthermore, we have shown that memory is defined at the neuronal level. When we learn something new, synapses that used to be small begin to increase in size. The synapse of the two neurons that are interacting. So we have evidence for a physical change in the plasticity of the brain when we consolidate a new memory. I have an article posted which talks about this in more detail, and also a paper which talks in detail about which proteins are required for a change in the synapse to occur whenever new memories are consolidated. So we know to the molecular level the details. So I want to conclude by saying a little bit more about the brain in general. We are all in awe of the brain, and it's really complex, and it's something really amazing and unusual. But that doesn't mean that it's something tied to non-physical entities or something that's too complicated to evolve. So how can something like this evolve? I'll leave that for a later video. As you know, I've said a lot already. Still got something more to say. But we do have a rudimentary understanding of how the brain is so complex. And you see, the power of the brain is not in the neurons themselves, but it's in the network that these neurons create. For example, the computational power of a network of 10 neurons is much greater than the computational power of 9 neurons in a network. Furthermore, these neurons are graded. That means that they don't just have an on-off option. They have many options in between, so it's very complex. And a billion of these would be extremely complex, right? It's pretty logical. But we also have some understanding of it. There's a paper I read a couple years ago, which I looked for but couldn't find today. But when I find it, I'll link it up in the description box. Otherwise, if somebody knows what I'm talking about, please post it. But anyway, what the paper does is it models this sort of neuronal network in a computer program, and the paper runs the program, and it concludes that conscious decisions and other decisions that neuronal network makes are reached when the network reaches a state of least energy. So whenever the network as a whole goes through states of high energy and low energy, and whenever it reaches that bottom point, that's when we reach a conclusion, either conscious or unconscious. Does this remind you of anything? You see, the thing is, the abstract concepts of the brain, such as decision making in this case, are still tied to concepts in physics, such as reaching a state of low energy. Now, I posted a Wikipedia article about neural networks in general, and also a paper in which it talks about when neuronal networks are messed up in vitro, how this leads to psychosis and other symptoms that we see in psychological disorders. I wish I had that paper. I don't have it, but when I find it, I'll keep looking for it. I'll definitely post it. All right, thanks, guys.